Not so fast. Comedian Whitney Cummings has not, I repeat, has not been red-pilled. She swears it up and down. She just went on CNN on New Year's Eve and blasted Democrats, Kamala Harris, President Joe Biden, and even CNN and its minuscule or at least fading audience numbers.
2024 election fried our brains. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary because they were too busy holding a body upright. Are we still rolling? Am I off?
Go for it.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer.
Interesting. And then later, she doubled down on some of those thoughts, said that Democrats have to be able to criticize themselves or there's a problem. She also criticized herself and said, hey, wait a minute. I've been self-censoring a time or two, maybe three. That's not what any comedian should do. That's not what any American should do. And then more recently, she blasted Democrats who were in charge in California about those raging wildfires, which are absolutely tragic. Now, label it what you want, but she certainly sounds like she's been red-pilled to a degree. But let's backtrack real quickly. What does red-pilled even mean? Well, it dates back to 1999 and the Keanu Reeves blockbuster, The Matrix. And it refers to characters in that film who were awakening for the first time. They've been lied to, they've been misdirected, and all of a sudden they realize the truth that's been kept from them for such a long time.
That was some real red pill stuff, Miles.
And people on the right have been using that term for a while now. It refers to people on the center left, sane, good, decent people who have been lied to for a very long time, and they're finally waking up to what's going on. It doesn't mean they've turned into Rush Limbaugh by any stretch of the imagination, but it says that something is amiss, that something they've been told, narratives that have been fed to them, well, maybe they're not quite accurate. And that's troubling to say the very least. And often the people who are red-pilled are very passionate about their new beliefs, or at least maybe their old beliefs in a new packaging. When you think about red-pilled celebrities, again, Whitney Cummings says that she doesn't belong to that group, but there are others who certainly do. Think about people like Dr. Drew Pinsky, or Jillian Michaels, or Sylvester Stallone, or Zachary Levi, or Tony Hinchcliffe, or Joe Rogan, Rob Schneider, Drea De Matteo. It's just a partial list. Matter of fact, in recent months, I've been listening a lot to The Boys Cast. It's a great show, very funny. And the hosts of that show, Ryan Long and Danny Polishuk, gosh, they sound like Sean Hannity at times. And they are not. They're not even political. They're really apolitical. But when you hear their conversations about the culture, about some of the political winds blowing around us, they tend to sound like conservatives.
When me and Brad first met, I didn't think we'd get along, but turns out we kind of agree on everything. Your racial identity is the most important thing. Everything should be looked at through the lens of race.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke. We both have
They've been red-pilled too, to a degree. I've been listening to them for a while. And, initially, Danny Polishuk really didn't sound like a right-leaning person at all. I'd describe him as pretty solidly center-left, but lately, not so much. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't criticize President Trump or the GOP. They're open to do that. They will be doing that. They should be doing that. But what happened? Why are these celebrities all of a sudden changing their ways, adopting different points of view and discarding old methods? Well, it's a political conversation, and this is not a strictly political show. So I want to veer away from that. But I think it's often about free speech. I think that's why you saw a lot of comedians, podcasters specifically, they veered toward Trump in the waning days of that presidential campaign from late last year. Think about Tony Hinchcliffe. He's the host of Kill Tony. It's an outrageous show. It's off the wall. It's unexpurgated. He's not a political beast at all. But he was at a Madison Square Garden rally trying to strum up interest for President Trump. And of course, he did it with a joke that went over like a lead balloon. We all know that.
There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
But why was he there in the first place? Again, not a political being at all. He wasn't like Scarlett Johansson or Mark Ruffalo. These are people who are talking politics a lot. They're activists. So why would they do that? Well, I think Bill Maher has said it best. Now, Bill Maher really has resisted the red pill. He sounds like he's been red pilled a time or two, maybe 3 or 4, but he insists he's still a progressive. He's still a liberal, but the Democrats changed. He didn't. That's been his mantra for quite some time now. I think it's a great way to explain it. The party shifted so far to the left and disengaged with what so many people care about in the culture. And that's why you're seeing these red pill celebrities. And I think we're going to see a few more over the weeks and months to come. I want to mention one comedian, Jim Gaffigan. Now, Jim Gaffigan is a man of faith. He's a Catholic. He's got a large family. And he's been fairly consistently left of center on political issues when he dabbles in it. He's really a PG-rated clean comic. But when he talks on social media, when he's in the public space, he does dabble in politics, and it's usually on the left. And he loathes President Donald Trump. He's got a lot of company there, but he's been pretty aggressive in that posturing. But in recent weeks, he's been backpedaling on that a little bit, in that he doesn't want to disconnect with Trump fans. He doesn't want to say, I tag you or paint you with the same brush as Trump. But then he also talked about how comedy has played out when it comes to satirical targets. He was recently at the Al Smith dinner, not recently, but just a few months ago, and he excoriated Kamala Harris and some other figures in the Democratic Party.
You know, this has been an interesting presidential campaign. The Democrats have been telling us Trump's reelection is a threat to democracy. In fact, they were so concerned of this threat, they staged a coup, ousted their democratically elected incumbent, and installed Kamala Harris.
Again, that's what you should do at an event like that, which is meant for these kind of bipartisan bickering and jokes and sarcasm. But Jim Gaffigan, he's not the guy you bring to a roast, and he's not the guy you bring to skewer the left. But he did, and he did it pretty effectively. He also appeared on Saturday Night Live more than a few times as Governor Tim Walz. Now, that impression, too, was pretty biting. Played up the whole knucklehead shtick, made fun of some of his stories he's been telling. What's going on? So just a few days ago, Jim Gaffigan talked about these issues, and he said, you know what? He was essentially told unofficially, I don't know if it was official, hands off the Democrats, hands off Kamala Harris. And he didn't like that, not one bit. So I don't know if he'll be red-pilled anytime soon, but it is interesting, isn't it? When people start to change and evolve with their views, especially in the public space, especially in an industry like Hollywood that really does celebrate progressive values. And of course, there's the Hollywood blacklist against conservatives. I've talked about that ad nauseum, and I'll continue to talk about it because it's important, but you know the context. Maybe even that's changing too. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe 2025 will be a glorious year for free expression in Hollywood. I sure hope so.
He specializes in free speech issues.
Free speech should be the ultimate red pill issue in these times. It really should be. But some people just don't want to take that pill or even nibble at it. And I mentioned Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel came out recently and was very, very upset that Facebook is taking away its fact-checking organizations, which have been corrupt and which have been dishonest and which have been absolutely one-sided. And Mark Zuckerberg of Meta fame said as much, which is fascinating. But Jimmy Kimmel didn't want to listen to that. He just raged and raged against Facebook, saying, oh, it's going to be another MAGA movement. It's going to be another MAGA platform. No, hopefully, it's going to be a free speech platform where community notes will guide the way and let people know what's right and what's wrong. Again, it's an imperfect system, but as we've seen on X, it's wildly better than what we've seen on Facebook. Remember the Hunter Biden laptop story? That one went down the memory hole. Seemed kind of important in retrospect.
And I said it in my New York Times bestseller, What About Hunter Biden?
And it was far from alone. This is a good thing, a good movement. This is progress in the culture. And some people, they're not too happy about it. But for others, yeah, it's going to open their eyes. And that's going to be exciting to watch. But I think the ultimate red pill moment is the tragedy unfolding before our eyes right now in California, those raging wildfires. What could be more tragic? What could be more heartbreaking? And I am the kind of person, when there's a big tragedy, when there's a big news cycle, I don't necessarily want to jump in with A, my hot takes, or B, let's blame X or Y, which just so happen to agree with my political philosophies. It seems cheap at times, if not tawdry. Not this time. This time is the right time to talk about what's going on in California, the one-party rule, the absolute incompetence that we're seeing in real time. It is shocking. And one of the people who thinks that this could be a sizable red pill moment is Adam Carolla. Of course, he's the great comedian and podcaster. He was in No Safe Spaces. Just a great truth teller in our society. I've been following him for years. I couldn't have more respect for him. He's super smart, super thoughtful. And of course, he doesn't even know if his house is still standing right now within those fires. He lives in LA. And he could be one of many people looking for a new home, looking to rebuild his life. It's just a terrible, tragic story. But of course, as we've learned in recent weeks, no water, no competency, no planning, lots of budget cuts to the fire department, lots of reasons why this was mismanagement on an epic level. And what Adam Carolla says is this could make California veer to the right. And I don't even mean that as a, yay, it's my team. But by gosh, this whole state has been mismanaged to such a shocking degree, which led to what we're watching right now, an absolute catastrophe.
We all know what it's like. And maybe this is, I say to people, when's it going to end? When are we going to change course? And then you know what the number one answer for California, when are we going to change course? Like, when are we going to go a different direction? The answer is when we bottom out.
Now, I don't like to disagree with Adam Carolla. He's right so often. He's sharp all the time. But I thought initially, I don't see that. I think people in that state are really wedded to their ideology. They may be devastated. They may be sorrowful about what's happening, but they'll keep voting for the Gavin Newsoms of the world. But Adam mentioned something else, which made me reconsider what I was saying. Because when it comes to rebuilding, that could be even more complicated. He's a construction expert at heart. He worked in that field for years before he became a comedian, and he knows how complex it is to build anything in Hollywood and elsewhere. This state is just burdened by red tape. And as so many people try to rebuild their homes and rebuild their lives, they may get entangled in it in a way they will soon not forget.
We tried to get some, but it would have taken months to clear up the red tape.
And if that happens, in addition to the catastrophes, in addition to losing their homes, in addition to seeing their neighborhoods, the places they grew up with just absolutely burned to the ground, that could have the ultimate red pill effect. And ultimately, we don't want to say, oh, let's bring in the Republicans. They can be just as incompetent as the Democrats at times. But how about some new faces, some new leaders, some new ideas? Man, California could really use that. So I think that's where we are with red pilling right now. I think more and more celebrities are going to wake up and see, boy, this ideology I've been following just religiously, maybe it hasn't steered me or the culture in the right way. Maybe it's time to rethink it and bring in some new ideas and new perspectives. And maybe throw out the people who did so badly and can't even own up to it. So that's where we are at the beginning of 2025. More red pilling will be on the way. More celebrities saying things that they really never said before. And, when it comes to people who have a pulpit, speak from the heart, that can have an influence in the culture. We've talked a lot about how celebrity political endorsements mean less and less and less. They're boilerplate. They're expected. They're exactly what we think we'll hear. They don't really move the needle. But when you have someone who's red pilled, there's a different energy behind it. And if you listen to the Dr. Drews of the world, the Jillian Michaels, they speak with a passion, with an intelligence, with a ferocity that can change hearts and minds. And I think those voices can be very powerful as opposed to the generic, I vote for X and Y. And I can blame Kid Rock for voting for Trump, and I can blame Scarlett Johansson for voting for Kamala Harris. It can be pretty equal, but these new voices, they really are compelling, and they've got something to say that we should hear. So I want to end with a question for you. Which celebrities might be red-pilled next? Are there some that seem on the fence? Are there some that seem willing to accept new ideas and to change their thinking a bit as new facts come into play? Why don't you leave a comment below and just say who you think will be red-pilled next and why? And even, is that a good thing? I think it is. I think it's important. I think we need accountability across the culture on the left and on the right. But for too long, the people and the power players on the left have had no accountability. Now it's coming at just a terrible time. But if there's any silver lining in this tragedy, maybe we'll see some real change in Hollywood, in California, change for the better. We'll have to wait and see.